I'm Brad Deutser, president of Deutser Clarity Institute, Deutser Consulting, and the author of Leading Clarity. Today on the show, we're going to talk about why thinking outside the box is dead wrong. We're also going to talk about why political correctness is destroying your business. Stay tuned.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Baron, is the founder of FullMontyLeadership.com. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Baron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Baron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, part of the Full Monty interview series. I'm your host, Dov Baron. I'm the founder of Full Monty Leadership, and I'm here to assist you tapping into the one thing that changes everything in your business and your life. Let me ask you, are you committed to up-leveling your leadership? Well, today we're going to ask, is the message, think outside the box, wrong? If so, why? Now remember, you can chat about this episode or any of our past episodes on our Facebook group or on our LinkedIn groups by simply going and looking for Leadership and Loyalty Podcast. Remember, you can chat about this episode or past episodes right there, okay? If you're a new listener, new viewer, thank you for joining us. Strap yourself in. We're about to go full Monty. And if you're a new listener, I want to really thank you for joining us and for sharing the show with everybody you know. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever it is you tune into podcasts. We always need your help in staying relevant, so please get over there, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. You can also catch us on traditional radio stations across the United States every Monday and Thursday, all the way from Las Vegas to Philadelphia and everywhere in between. You can also catch us on Roku TV, where there's over 100,000 subscribers to the show. And if you're a regular listener, big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners, with a potential reach of 2.5 to 4 million listeners for every single show. We are honored and grateful to be cited by Inc.com as the #1 podcast to listen to make you a better leader. And I don't know if you know this, but you can actually catch us at home by on Alexa or Google Home by simply saying, play Dov Baron podcast. So thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. All right, let's strip it down and dive right in. As a leader, whether you're a CEO, C-suite leader, a sales leader, entrepreneur, leader in any capacity, you know that we've all heard it a million times. You got to think outside of the box. But what if that standard accepted message is actually what's getting in the way of you having the clarity you need to grow your company and your people? If thinking outside of the box is wrong, what's right? Rigidity or something you've never considered? Well, stay tuned because you're about to find out. My guest today on this episode is Brad Deutser. Now, he is the author of Leading Clarity, the breakthrough strategy to unleash people, profit, and performance. Brad attacks business through a unique lens of clarity. From his innovative consulting firm to his newest innovation, Deutser Clarity Institute, a think tank. Ideas accelerated in this learning lab, Brad is helping leaders rethink performance, for not only their own, but their companies. He's all about people creating connections inside and outside of the organization. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and help me welcome Brad Deutser!
Love the applause. Thanks for having me, Dov.
Good to have you, mate. It took a while for us to get here, but I'm glad you're with us.
I'm thrilled to be here. I'm excited for the conversation.
So one of the places I like to start is by asking who has been a major influence in your life. And it's easy for us to, point at big figures that we all think of, but very oftentimes the answers I get to these questions are people that we would never think of, or maybe don't even know. It might be your Auntie Sally or whatever it is. Who is somebody who's had a massive influence on you that we might not know or might not suspect?
The easy answer is my dad. and watching what he's done with his career, good times, bad times, and how he handled that. If I think differently about it, I go back to my childhood, and I think about I went to a boys' camp in the summers, 16 years of my life. The owner of the camp was a man who preached to us about doing things the right way, about values, about things that when you're 11 and 12 years old, you're like, I just want to go play basketball. I want to go run around. And he was consistent with the message of doing things the right way. And so I think that Bert Margolis was one of those inspirational figures in my life, even when I didn't realize it back then. But he taught me the importance of being grounded, and it aligned with all the lessons my dad and mom have reinforced throughout my whole life.
You know, I love asking that question because of what comes out. You know, part of my life's purpose is to impact the lives of people who will never know my name, or whose name I may never know. I have no idea who Bert Margolis is. No idea. But you just impacted my life because he impacted yours. You impacted the lives of all of our listeners who will never know his name. You know, don't have a reference to his name, and he will never know theirs. And how, that's why I asked that question, because that's the power of really committing to be a leader, not by status, not by title, but by impact. And thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for asking it, because it's something that I haven't gotten to think about in a long, long time. But there's so many stories that have now filled my head about the stories that he used to tell us. So thank you.
Is that how he would do it? Would he impact you by doing it in the context of stories? That's an interesting piece.
Yeah, you know, so much of what we talk about with what we do is about humanizing connections. And he would talk to us about, you know, never slide with your feet up, you might hurt somebody. Or he talked about the invisible wall between men and women, and the fact that it's okay to hug, and it's okay to connect in different ways with people. And again, when you're a young kid, it's kind of out there. But as you realize, what he was doing is he was planting seeds that I think so many leaders plant every single day in their people, to give them something to hold on to and bring forward and figure out how it's going to impact their lives and the people around them.
But that's really that's a really important point, Brad, isn't it? I mean, that we as leaders plant seeds every day, but unfortunately, many leaders are not very conscious of that. And so they're planting seeds of weeds. They're planting seeds of destruction. They're planting seeds of low self-esteem and devaluing. And, you know, and that awareness of, let's plant a seed of that may not come to fruition even while you work here, but it might come to fruition 10 years into your career after you've left here. Absolutely.
You know, one of the things that we talk about with clarity is about the intentionality that comes from our actions. Mm-hmm. And that intentionality is so important. So the seeds we plant are intentional. There's a purpose. And the other piece to it is, you know, we preach a lot about the idea of positive psychology and how positivity changes not how you feel, but the performance. Yes. And so that positivity, there's seeds of positivity that we intentionally plant every single day. And I look back throughout my early career, through my childhood, and I look and I can reflect back on the times that people planted those seeds to help me get over a rough patch. Yep. To help me see something I couldn't see. So,
yeah, and that's it. When we plant those seeds, we may never see them come into fruition, but they may in fact burst out from the ground in the moment that person needs it most, when they're in their darkest moment. Suddenly the seed that you planted 10, 20 days ago, weeks ago, years ago, is suddenly the last blade that will take them across that bridge, across that gap. It's a very powerful, powerful message. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Let's go back to what I was talking about in the interim here when we started, which was why is the message why would you say the message of think outside the box is incorrect or limited at least?
Well, it's interesting because my whole career, I was prized as this wild outside the box thinker.
Mm-hmm.
I was out there. If you wanted a crazy idea, come to Brad. Brad will have that idea. I mean, I have suggested press conferences on the middle of the rush hour traffic in the busiest freeway in major cities just to prove a point, on something. I've bubble wrapped ambulances. I've flown ducks for you name it. I've come up with some crazy ideas. And for a long time, I thought, hey, these are outside the box because that's what people want. But we've spent the last almost 30 years researching it. And what we've realized is it's actually the framework of the box that allows leaders to become better leaders. And it allows people in an organization a place in which to belong. And as we all know, that belonging is so important in our society today. So the interesting thing, Dov, is that we talk about the expression inside the box, outside the box, but we don't really stop to think about the fact that what does the box look like? We just say, oh, I'm inside, I'm outside. And when we stop to think about the definition that's required and what defines our box, we realize that the things that are most important to our organization, to our leadership, are tethered to the heart and soul right inside the box. Where outside the box are things that are often disconnected from the fundamentals of the box.
So in many ways, this is, and correct me if I'm wrong, right? But this is really saying what is our box that works best for us, that supports our people, that is the container of our purpose, our mission, our vision, our values, so that people can know this is the box they want to be held in, not restricted in, but held in, so that they can flourish. Is that a fair way of putting it?
Yeah, that's definitely a fair way of putting it. And I loved what you said. It's not where they're constricted in, because what the box does, and our research over the years has proven, is the box provides a measure of flexibility and creativity where people aren't inhibited they're not afraid because they know the parameters. They understand the parameters in which they work. And our box, the foundation of the box, which you touched on, which is so critical, because the box, a lot of people think, well, my box is four-sided. And for much of our early work, it was a four-sided box. But we said, wait, business is dimensional. So it's actually a six-sided box.
Yes.
And the bottom of it, which holds everything together, is what you talked about. It's the identity. It's our values. It's our purpose. It's the things that ground us and that help us to articulate and protect our culture.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. When you say, because you have this Clarity Institute. When you say clarity, it's the name of your new book. When you say clarity, what exactly are you referring to? Because I think that it's one of those things that is thrown around, and it's fascinating to me as a leader, as somebody who works with leaders, that what I see as a great lack of clarity, that people feel like they have clarity on. So when you say clarity, what are you actually referring to?
So when we talk about clarity, it's not the traditional definition of, oh, I was in the shower this morning and I had a moment of clarity, that lightning strike, that aha kind of moment. Clarity to us is a defined process.
Yes.
It's a process that helps leaders make sense of the constant change and chaos around them. So when we think about clarity, it's about defining the box. It's about understanding the dimensional box. It's about identifying how we humanize connections inside and outside our organizations. And it's holding our box together, holding our box, our people, our dreams together with the glue that we call positivity. So as we think about clarity in its most simple way, it's a framework to address chaos, ambiguity, and constant change. And the process is the box, humanizing connections, and leveraging that glue that's positivity.
So, when we again, when we think about the box in the way that we've traditionally thought about it, it's been about challenging rigidity. And so therefore the assumption will be, if we're going to say, well, it's not about thinking outside the box, we need a box, then it may seem like, well, what you're condoning is rigidity. And of course you're not. What you're doing is you're challenging thinking, right?
We're challenging thinking, and the idea of the box being rigid is one of the first kind of barriers that our team had to get over as we started our work with it, because we said, the box is different shapes and sizes depending on your company, depending on your market, your needs. The box is permeable. It can change. It can evolve with your organization. The reality is that leaders are guiding other people. And other people, whether they're other leaders or they're people across our organizations, there is a deep human need to connect and to be connected with something. And so if we don't create the framework, if you will, the framework from which people can be better leaders and people can be better employees and more creative, then we're doing a disservice for them. So it's not creating the rigidity, it's actually creating a freedom, because people know where they belong. People know, and from a leadership standpoint, outside the box thinking. I can be a widget maker, and I have this opportunity. I'm going to go buy a bunch of hamburger stores. Well, wait. Is that tied to my business or is that not? And the box doesn't preclude you from going to buy those hamburger locations. It just forces you to question, is this core to who I am? Is this fundamental? How is it additive? So it's not rigid. It's designed to provide definition and help set expectations, if you will, for leaders in the workforce.
Now, one of the things you talk about is creativity in motion, right? So can we sort of, because that sounds, again, creativity in motion, then we've got this box, we've got the rigidity. So what do you mean by that?
Look, leaders there's an interesting trend that we're noticing with leaders, and there is a different search for creativity and a different search for solutions. And part of the reason why is I think that the complexity of the workplace today is leaders are recognizing that the traditional strategy, culture, communications, and silos aren't the solutions that are working today. And so there is creativity in how things are connected and how we engage. Creativity is interwoven and constantly evolving inside and outside an organization. Our consumers, our customers' needs are changing. The creative ways in which we engage with them are evolving. So creativity is underlies much of the work that we do with Clarity, and it's why our work is engaging and our spaces are so unique. Our institute is Willy Wonka land for business leaders because of that creativity in motion, where everywhere you look, there is something creative and different to engage the mind and invoke different thoughts and ways to see things.
You brought up something there that I find very interesting, because there's oftentimes not always, but oftentimes a large gap between the business-minded person and the entrepreneurial-minded person. And the entrepreneurial-minded person tends to be highly creative, has a bit of SOS, shiny object syndrome, is looking for the next thing, and oftentimes need that box that you're talking about. And on the other side is oftentimes the rigidity of a business thinker, bottom line, process. And it seems, like a lot of times they it costs them their creativity. It seems like what you're trying to do here is a framework of how these two things come together. Is that correct? Is that a good understanding?
It's a great understanding. It is how these things connect, because I have struggled my career as a leader, questioning, am I a business person? Am I an entrepreneur?
Mm-hmm.
Can I be both? And I try to take away the labels from it, because I think that we all have some measure of entrepreneurial spirit in us in whatever we're leading and doing. But yeah, I think you definitely hit it on the head, because the largest businesses in the world, some of the most successful, still need to come back to their box, still need to come back to the foundation of their box. Have we gone away from our purpose? We evaluate all the sides of the box. Do our people understand our direction? Are we able to adapt to the environment? Are our people learning and growing? I mean, there's all these different facets that high-performing organizations, whether you're entrepreneurial or whether you're just a large business, still need to understand.
Absolutely. And I like the fact that what you're saying here is also important, which is, again, away from the rigidity, but rather that your box might be evolving, but it's always a test to say, is this aligned with our box? So the box may get bigger, it may expand, but is it in alignment? If it's some shanty town you ended up building over there, which I know I've been guilty of, building some shanty town over there when you're actually trying to build a high rise up is not in the best interest, although it can be very attractive.
Alignment, as the word you used, is so critical, especially in today's business. If you think about what leaders are faced with, the way that they're distracted in so many ways, the workforce comes to work, but they're distracted. We think about the political environment, the changing societal norms, the social changes that are happening around us. There's distraction. And so the best leaders are the ones that focus on that alignment. We have a phrase here that we call house in clarity. And the house in clarity is simply thinking about the organization as a house and thinking about the bottom of the box, which is the foundation. You know, that's our values, it's our purpose, it's our key, it's the behaviors. And then building up, the roof is our vision. And are the things that are most important to us aligned? And do they connect with our values? Do they connect with our vision? And that's our house in clarity.
Yeah, love it, love it. So when you look around with the work that you're doing, the organizations that you're working with, the leaders that you're working with, you know, you like me, probably see some things that are glaring. What is it that you see that most organizations are simply just missing?
I think that I don't know if this is going to be controversial or not.
Good.
But here's where I'll go with it. All right.
Sure.
So I think one of the things that we're seeing missing in organizations today is 100% of the truth. There is such a reliance today on political correctness. If we think about the environment in which we live and work, politics are dominating the conversation. It's hard to get away from it, but they're infiltrating the workforce and they're forcing leaders to not have real conversations. People are coming to the boardroom table. We're having conversations. I want to protect my job, so I'm not going to say everything that I really feel. I am not going to say anything because it's going to offend this person. And so we're going to agree to have this politically correct conversation, leadership teams. And the reality is we're talking in 50, 75, 80% of the truth, and we're building strategies on those conversations that are less than full conversations. And so that's one of the biggest, most glaring things that we're seeing is a reluctance to have the conversation, to feel safe. Psychological safety is another thing we're seeing in organizations where there is an imbalance between fear and trust, fear and employee voice. And I think all these things kind of tie together.
Couldn't agree more. I speaking last night, and one of the questions I was asked, which is, what is one of the things that's damaging to leadership? And I said political correctness, because it doesn't question intention. It just is a blanket, right? And I said, I'm gonna give you an example. I'm driving down the road, and this is gonna, you thought you were controversial. Wait till this one. I said, I'm in this room with 40 people who are all, want to be there listening to myself and another leader talking. And I said, I want you to imagine this. This is truth, by the way. This is not fictional. I'm driving down the road in Vancouver, British Columbia, which, by the way, our nickname is Hongcouver because a lot of people moved here from Hong Kong when it was taken over by the British. So there's a lot of Chinese people here, and many of them wonderful, lovely people. Some of them are my clients. And I said, I'm driving down the road in Vancouver. And as I'm driving down the road, I'm actually in the passenger seat. My friend is driving, and my friend leans out of the window and shouts, "Get out of the way, you chink." You can't say that word. Politically completely incorrect. And I said this to the audience, and I watched people go, and I said that my friend, the driver, is Chinese. So is he a racist? Because you have to question intent. He was not talking about race. He was talking about a style of driving in his mind. It's not about right or wrong. And you can say, well, that's incorrect and we shouldn't use that language. And I'm not saying we should or we shouldn't. But what I'm saying is, hold on. Before you jump to the conclusion, let's step back and look at the intention here. Is the intention to attack, to hurt? Is the intention? We have to question that. Because I grew up in a time where I grew up in a place where I was surrounded by people of every different color and ethnicity. None of us had any racism with each other. And we said politically incorrect things to each other all the time. And nobody took offense because it was never meant that way. I hug my friends. I hug my clients. Nobody thinks, oh my God, he's a sexual predator, because I'm not. And I think that this is the thing we have to stop and really, instead of jumping off the cliff into being offended, which is about, then we go, well, we can't really have the true conversation. And I don't know, it's the title of your book. I don't know how we get to clarity until we can get past that. Would you agree?
I totally agree. Your story is exactly right. It is about intent. And the overwhelming intent of people is good. The problem is we have this thing called social media. We have this thing called email, where our phones that we carry with us, that all of a sudden everybody is the media right now.
Yes.
You say the wrong thing, it's taken out of context. You type something to somebody that's intended for one person with meaning, and it gets spread out. The intent is different. When we humanize these connections and have real conversations with people, the human connection creates that intent. People understand where you come from in the conversation. And that's what's missing in organizations. We're so quick I talk all the time about, we devalue listening, and we've elevated the art of reacting. We have to react to everything. We don't listen and hear and take in. And so it's creating organizations that are built on false foundations. And we're creating relationships outside of organizations because we don't want to say what we really believe. And there's a respectful way to do it. It doesn't have to be disrespectful. This is simply my opinion. This is simply the way that I want to express something. You express it, and let's come to agree or disagree, but let's do it with 100% of the truth. We have a space in our office. We have our spaces in our office. Everything is intentional. We have a Color My World. We have a mindful station, and we have a sticky station where we say, hey, we're going to norm conversations around 100% of the truth. If we have something we need to talk about it, let's do it right here, right out in the open, not behind closed doors. Let's have it. We all need it.
This is so important. And so refreshing, certainly, but it's important because I fully agree with you. I don't know how you get to clarity while tiptoeing, because clarity is both a bulldozer and a surgery. There are times when it needs the bulldozer to knock the bullshit down, and there are times when you have to go in with a scalpel and just, fine, microsurgery it. But you can't do just one. You have to do both. And
yeah, no, I mean, that's the whole idea of the intentionality that's required with clarity.
mm-hmm.
It is an intentional construct so that you as the leader are aware of when you need the scalpel and when you need the bulldozer and when you just need to be. And it gives that framework to allow you to make the decisions in times that, let's be honest, there's no roadmap for leaders today. The historical roadmap that leaders that came before us used, there are some fundamentals that sure we can carry forward, but the decisions we make are it's difficult to predicate on something that's happened before because the environment is changing at such a rapid pace.
Yeah, and talk about in the context of leadership, we only have to look at, it doesn't matter, as I say this, whether the person listening is a fan of Donald Trump or a hater of Donald Trump. The bottom line is that Donald Trump has not changed the face of leadership. He is the result of the changing face of leadership. So he's not the cause. He's actually what has come out of it. And whether you like him or not, it's just for us to see it's not the same. And playing the same game won't work. So you've got to play a different game. You've got to up the level. And if you don't like what's showing up, you have to do something about it. And being politically correct is not going to do it either. And of course, being brutal is not going to do it either. Because and people tend to look at things in those polarities. I'm either politically correct or I'm brutal. No, there's something in the middle, and it is clarity around intention. It is the willingness to be curious and actually find out, well, where are you really coming from? What do you really care about? What really matters here? Are you talking from your bias? Are you talking from your opinion? Are you talking from your research? Are you talking from attack? Are you talking from defense? There's all different ways of looking at where somebody's coming from.
Yeah, when we work with leaders and teams, one of the things we tell them is, hey, get back to some of the basics on human connection. Go back and talk to people. But one of the things that I tell people is add 15 seconds to your conversation. So you are able to give a little bit more color, a little bit more definition, and we're not leaving things open for people to assume, to add their own definition, and so it's creating, it's expressing that intent to people, letting them know, understanding, giving them a chance to understand you, and you giving them a chance to, and you understanding them. It's getting back to that old fashioned kind of, both of us together have a responsibility. And if we can create that in our organizations, think about the power of what you're changing.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. It's, this piece you brought up, which is the humanizing. Let's explore that a little bit more, because to me, it's the most important piece around leadership. What does it mean to you when you talk about humanizing, when you're working with teams or leaders around humanizing? Because so many leaders are bottom line driven, and I personally say in our work, soft skills are the new bottom line. But what does it mean for you when you talk about humanizing?
It means getting back to the basics of being human and connecting with people. We talk about the importance of intentionality here, intentionally connecting, humanizing connections, eliminating compliance. I check the box, I send them an email. No, it's going deeper than that. It's thinking about when we are writing a memo to our employees, this is when we write a memo to our employee, dear employee, and we explain everything, we're talking in our own language. We're talking in business speak. We're not talking to them as people. We're talking to them under the label of employees. And I challenge leaders to say, instead of writing dear employee, start your memo, dear mom. Write the memo to your mom and see how you incorporate emotion that so many leaders have been told, eliminate emotion from what you do. No, we're telling you to put emotion back. We're telling you to connect, be real with people. We're telling you to write the memo to mom and then erase mom and put employees and see how people connect. You talk about bottom line leaders. We had the opportunity to work with Warren Buffett, and we did a grand opening event for him, and I had it all set up and it was all very organized, and I knew exactly where people were going to stand and where they were going to greet him and how long they had to greet him. And we talked, and he looked at me and he said, Brad, thank you for setting this up, but I think I'm going to go outside and I'm going to talk to them where they are, not have them come to me. And I said, Mr. Buffett, no, you can't do that. And he said, Brad, and I said, I know what you're going to do. And he was right. He went outside and he shook the hands of thousands of people waiting in line. It was 100+ degrees outside. He was in his coat and his tie. He didn't care. And you know what? They did care. The people cared, and the comments that we got were, I can't believe that he did that. I can't believe he came to me. Well, it's breaking barriers. And so part of that humanizing connections is eliminating the barriers, eliminating the walls in our company between HR and compliance and legal and communication, where they can't have honest conversations because the communications department has to trump the legal, and the legal has to trump everybody. No, that's part of the stuff we need to wipe away and get rid of the silos and create those connections.
You know, it's fascinating to me, Brad, what you're talking about, because of course your work and my work is very aligned, and we talked about that before. But what's fascinating about it mostly for me is, you know, you're talking about thinking outside the box. You need to actually think about your box. But let's break down all the walls. And I love that. I love that you know, and this is what we need to understand. And I am a great believer in embrace the contradiction. Embrace the contradiction. That's where your most growth is. So the contradiction is you actually need a box, but you must break all the walls. Every wall must be broken. And so all the walls of rigid rules, which are, you know, as you said, legal trumps everybody. And HR is the lowest version of the C-suite. Nonsense, right? That we have to think about profit first. No, we need to think about people first. You know, let's start breaking down all those walls. Let you know, this whole thing around, I always say that the idea was good, which is the idea of the open door policy of leadership. Lovely idea, terrible in practice. Why? Because the wall, you can take the wall off the hinges, it won't matter if you've still got a psychic wall there that people can't, because you're going to bark at them, or because you're the boss, or because you don't listen. As opposed to saying, hold on a sec, let me get up and let me go talk to them and say, well, you know, what's going on? Tell me here. Let me understand it from your point of view. I need to grasp this. That is like, I love that you're actually doing both sides of that, which is really important. Here's the box, here's the framework. The framework is your purpose, your mission, your vision, your culture, your values, etc. And let's break all the walls down in the process of fulfilling it.
Yeah, again, it goes to how we label things. We're so quick to label things.
Yeah.
And why does a wall have to be something that's impermeable? Why does a wall have to be, why does it have to be rigid? We move walls all the time. We knock walls down all the time. It's simply about a framework, you know, and as I think about the box, it's direction, operations, people, and engagement. The bottom of the box is identity, and the top is environment. It's simply a framework from which we can operate. But I love what you said about the contradiction, because we do have to break down walls. We do have to break down barriers every day. We don't think about that, but that's what leadership is, and that's how we evolve and continue to grow and move our organizations and our teams forward.
Absolutely. Now, here's another controversial comment in the book. You say, culture eats strategy for breakfast is dead wrong. Tell us about that.
So again, another one of those lines that I simply accepted. Again, in my whole career, culture eats strategy for lunch, eats for breakfast. You know, whatever the meal is, culture was king. And our research and our box proved that statement to not be accurate. And so what happens in the box as we evaluate our box and we evaluate the four sides, the direction and operations, two sides really form the strategic system of an organization, and the people and engagement form the culture system. And as we were doing work, we were recognizing that organizations that had where their culture system dramatically over-indexed over their strategic side of their box, they weren't successful. And when we looked at the other side of it, that the strategy side was so dominant over the culture system, that didn't work. And so we realized that it's the equilibrium that exists between the strategic system in an organization and the cultural system. And when you create that balance, and one can be a little bit more, a little bit less. I mean, it's not about being exact. We don't look at good or bad, but we're looking for balance. We're looking for that equilibrium. And that allows a natural flow of energy, which allows the culture and allows everything to come together and flow more naturally through the organization.
Yeah, it's definitely asking us to shift, and I think that's a very important piece. I want to sort of step back a little bit and go back to something you spoke about a bit earlier, if that's okay. And that is, I want you to tell us about your Willy Wonka factory of leadership that you've built, because, you know, before we were even recording, you and I were talking about how that's taking off, and instead of it being in one place, now it's starting to pop up. You know, people are wanting to have it happen in other places. Tell us a little bit about it.
So I think it goes back to the entrepreneurial side of me, where I wrote the book and I was asked, where can I experience this? How can I bring this to life in a different way? And I had all these different ideas, and I decided to build out all the exercises and the experiences and bring the book to life. And so I created this highly imaginative place that is a combination of science and art. Talk about creativity and motion. It is every piece of the Institute is intentional. From the floors that are gray, that leaders walk through, ambiguity and gray matter, to the quadrants for human mapping, different experiences we put people through, to giant glass boards, to spinning cubes, to flashing lights, to a reflection room, to artwork on the walls that we've painted, that people, different leaders see different things, showing them that there's different perspectives, to a giant ugly beam that kind of rests in the corner that holds the building up, and it forced us to say, what is this? Well, it's the beam that holds the building up. What's the beam that holds us up? Positivity, positive psychology. So it becomes our positivity beam. We took the air conditioning vent and created a game in the sky that we called higher thinking, with card decks and things. So we've created an experience for leaders and teams to get out of their everyday environment, to fundamentally escape from the chaos. And we've created our own chaos with creative inputs that are designed to overstimulate and overwhelm leaders, and to allow them something that they don't get every day: freedom. The freedom to be them, the freedom to create, the freedom to explore, and to look in the mirror in a safe place. We have the box for organizations, but we also have a box for leaders with 12 behavioral competencies that we believe that leaders need to really excel in. And so they look in the mirror, and there's 100 questions for each of those competencies where, am I inspiring is one of them, is being an inspirational leader. And 100 questions on, am I inspiring? How do I inspire? Who? How does it make me feel? Who's inspired me? And you have to write with a marker on a mirror. And the exercises in the Institute are just as creative as the space, but it's designed to transport people to a different place and time.
So does a leader come in and spend a couple of days with you, or how does that work?
So a leader can come spend a day or a couple days. We love it when they have the ability to spend a couple days, because we can not only do what we call like a leadership assessment. Where are you? What are the things that are important to you? What's happening? And then really explore. We explore energy. We explore kind of the circuit breakers, a giant metallic wall with magnets to place what things are breaking up your energy grid, so to speak. And so leaders spend a day or two with us, and then we create programs for them to go back and experience this and work on it, and then come back periodically through the year. But part of the power in this space is how it brings teams together, and teams that don't generally say 100% of the truth, teams that come from very different backgrounds. It breaks down barriers, and there's a magic that happens there to have conversations. And as you said, we expected it just to be in Houston, and now we have someone in Austin and someone in New York, and different people saying, I need an institute. I want an institute inside my company. And it becomes part of their learning hub and changing how they communicate, learn, think, and how they come together as teams and leaders.
So you're in what city?
I'm in Houston, Texas.
So if somebody wanted to do it, they'd have to come to Houston, but you are actually looking at creating these now in other cities as well.
We're creating institutes in other cities, and part of the magic of what we do and the creativity that we bring to things is we'll bring the institute, even if it's not exactly what's in our institute. We're able to go anywhere in the country and world and bring it to life. We have an engagement in Spain where we're going to bring a bunch of stuff and take over a room and fill someone's senses. We may not have the flashing lights, flashing stoplights, or the blinking arrows that remind us that we're off and on, but there's a strategic direction, but you can still have the experience.
So this is an important piece, because again, I had this conversation at the presentation last night, and that oftentimes I meet what I call academic leaders. And what I mean by that is that they have, they've got the MBA, they have read the right books, and they've even run, I've met some of them that have actually run companies, but they are just not leaders. They've not learned what it takes to lead other than in an academic manner, or a purely strategic and academic manner. What do you see is what you're doing, do you see that as the future of leadership learning?
I hope it is. We're having different conversations, and leaders are having different ways to think about themselves. And again, I hate to be repetitive, but to connect with themselves as a leader. So many people have moved up the ranks because of their academic pedigree, because of what they accomplished in a previous role. Yes. And they're great at managing, but they're not great at leading.
Yes.
And what we found is that even great leaders are looking for ways to be better leaders. And that's the sign of the leaders that we work with. I want more. I want more out of myself, more out of my team. And, you talk about MBAs, and we work with many academic institutions, and we're big, huge in the academic space. But I always talk to leaders about the important letters after their name, after their title, and that's MBE. Because there's something about a master's of business experience that you can't discount. That MBE that you earn every single day through the lessons of your people, through the lessons of other great leaders. I feel like I'm in a constantly evolving MBE program because I get to talk to people like you. I get to learn what you talk about and how you think about things, and it inspires me to push forward.
Yeah. And you know, you said something there earlier that I think we have to constantly come back to, and that is we look at leadership as an external process. I'm leading them. And the question I ask people is, are you leading your life? And they go, well, yeah. And I go, well, just think about that. Are you actually leading it, or are you reacting to your life? Because if you're leading your life and when you look at others, you go, okay, well, I need to do this. Do you do that with yourself? Because if we don't do the internal leadership, if we don't look at ourselves, we don't look at how we're leading ourselves, and you can't do that without the clarity that is needed of self-examination. And I think that this is one of the places where leadership most often falls down is, you know, we do a lot of stuff with very high level, deep understanding of emotional intelligence, not the surface stuff, because we say the surface stuff, it's very nice, but so what? Who cares? It's something you're using on somebody. And unless you understand the self-knowledge, you don't actually, it's a damp cloth. It doesn't really do anything. There's no substance to it. It's the depth of self-knowledge that makes you a deeply emotionally intelligent leader, not the skill sets of reading the books, but actually understanding, oh, I'm paying attention to this person. And yeah, they're saying this, but what I'm seeing is that. That's the emotional intelligence, is I'm hearing this, but I'm seeing that. And I'm not going to assume that that's right. I'm going to ask a question about that, so that because I don't want to make stuff up, but I also don't want to let lies slide by.
It's why the Institute, I think it goes back to the question of why the Institute is, because you have to experience it. And we talk to leaders and we talk to people all over about this idea of an accidental life. And so many people are leading an accidental life. Yeah. And it is not a life of intention. It is not a life, you know, they say, oh, if I can find my purpose. Well, we need to find our purpose and our identity and be intentional. It doesn't mean that we're not going to be taken off course. Things happen, but how we respond, and that's why we work with the box as that framework for companies and leaders to help navigate those things, to have a more intentional life and to experience the things that we read and that we hear about.
Mm-hmm. Brad, this is a great conversation. We are coming close to the end, and interestingly and surprisingly enough. So I want to move into more of our lightning round. Are you okay with that?
Let's go for it.
All right, cool. What is the best piece of counterintuitive advice you've ever been given or would give?
Well, the best piece of counterintuitive, one of my favorite pieces of advice was life is a long road. Stay on the road. Just get on it and stay on it. And what's counterintuitive is where you can veer right or left, whichever way you choose is always right. It's always right. You never make a mistake. It's the right choice in that moment. I don't know if that hits the answer, but that's.
Well, I think that's an interesting point, right? And I think that I will go the other way, which is the right choice is the wrong choice if you don't have clarity about why you're doing it.
Totally agree with you.
Right. So
it's about knowing you.
It's about knowing you, right? So, you know, sometimes I do things that people go like, that is so wrong for you. And I go, actually, it's not. And I know why. And I can't actually even explain it, but I know why. And there's other things that I've gone, people go, oh, you should do this. This is a great opportunity for you. Like, it really isn't for me. It is a great opportunity, but it's not for me. And it's like you said, it's always the right choice if you were willing to have the self-knowledge and to actually question yourself and be willing to have that self-examination piece.
Agree.
Right. What are you presently most curious about?
I'm most curious about people and what brings them together. I'm fascinated by how people make connections. And again, not the surface ones, but real connections in a time that prizes the the not real ones. So I'm fascinated by people. I'm fascinated by what get them excited and what connect them. I think that's what excites me right now.
Cool. You know, we spoke about earlier about political correctness and how pervasive it is. With that sort of out there and sort of pushing that off to the side so it's out of the peripheral, what is your bravest opinion? What is the thing that you have a strong opinion about that might not be so, I'm not saying it isn't, but it might not be so politically correct. It's something that you know, like, actually, I really believe this.
I believe a lot of things, and I believe that people that leaders have a responsibility to say what they believe, regardless of the consequences, as long as it's done respectfully. Look, I believe that that policies are bad in organizations, and that they've become masqueraders. I believe that there's an unspoken gap between boards and leaders for various reasons, and there's a lot of things that I believe that I think that things that masquerade as clarity that simply are not.
Oh, that's good. There are a lot of things that masquerade as clarity that are simply not. That is very true and profoundly important. What is something, what is it that can make you cry in sadness?
Oh, it's always goes back to family. I'm emotional. I get emotional. But if my kids or my wife, if something is not going well, or not, you know, something that's happened that I know is important to them, that can make me cry. Sure. If family can make me cry and well up with tears. This morning on the other side of it, I got to do something that I welled up with tears out of pride, but family is the one that brings me to tears.
What makes you cry laughing?
Oh, cry laughing. I love listening to other people tell jokes. I love being with friends who are just free to be them, and just the idiosyncrasies that make us who we are as people.
Tell us something you recently learned that's exciting for you.
That I recently learned. I learn something every single day.
I'm sure. But there's probably something that, you know, you learned, and it might have been a clarity, as in you knew it, but you learned it at a bigger level. It might have been something brand new you never thought about, and somebody said something, you went, "Oh, wow, I never considered that."
You know, this morning, I guess this morning, I got to present a framework of kind of a culture for an institution that I've known for a lot of years, a historically Black college and university, and I was up there presenting what it was, and I learned that people want the same thing. They want clarity of purpose. They want clarity of understanding. They want a future, and I think I always know it, but today the feedback that I got on not what this means to them today, but how they could connect the dots. I think I learned that people have incredible vision.
Yeah, that's lovely. That's beautiful. In a parallel universe, what's your career?
A
I love this question. It always stumps people. I love it.
I think I've done in this universe, I've done everything I ever dreamed with my consulting and my coaching and the institute and my writing, and getting to speak. In the other universe, I would do the same thing with to a different audience. I think that I would be a teacher and a coach of kids, and I would that's where I get so much of my energy is by just the whole learning. So I think I used to coach basketball years and years ago, and so I go back to my days of coaching and teaching.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to share with us where people can find out more about you, about your institute, about your new book, all those kinds of things. But before I do that, I really want to ask you to share with us one piece of practical advice that you would like to share with our viewers and our listeners that they can sort of go away and put into practice, very soon, if not today, within the next few days, that will really allow them to get what it is that your message was about today.
Well, I think that one is to begin to think about that framework, to think about the framework of their organization. And we have tools that they can find online, and we're always happy to talk to people about it. I'd love for them to go break through and create a connection today that is different than they made yesterday. Someone that they've emailed to go talk to them. And then on the positivity side, to really genuinely embrace positivity as a profitability catalyst, as a driver of health and well-being. And as part of that, think deeper about what positivity is and start with them. So if you're going to take one thing away, it would be grateful. Be grateful not for your company, not for your people around you. Of course, you need to be grateful for all them, but start with finding something that you're grateful for about you. I always encourage leaders every week, write 5 things down that they're grateful for about them, 5 things that they're grateful around everyone else. And next week when you do it, you can't repeat any of the 5 things that you're grateful for about you. And you'll be amazed at the energy you feel and the way that you can see yourself as an evolving, growing leader, because you realize that all these things around you're grateful for, but it starts with you. So that's the thing I'd leave people with.
Great practical advice. Love it. Love it. Brad, this has been a joy and a pleasure, sir. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Please tell our viewers, our listeners, where they can find out more about you, about your institute, about your fabulous book. Please tell them how to catch hold of all those things from you right now.
So you can, the book is available at Amazon. On Amazon, there's lots of information out there. We have Deutser.com, which gives about our consulting. We have Deutser Clarity Institute, DEUTSER, clarityinstitute.com, that gives you the story of the Institute. And then so much of our writings and thinkings are on braddeutser.com. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, at Brad Deutser, and love to talk, love to share ideas, love to learn from people out there. And I can't thank you enough, Dov.
Well, thank you, Brad. This has been a pleasure and honor. Really, thank you for being with us. Thank you for all that you shared. This was definitely an enlightening conversation, and I love your message. I love what you're doing, and I highly encourage you, dear listener, viewer, to really, go to Brad's websites. The names, as I said, of course, we'll make sure that those are in the show notes. Please give them out again, Brad, so that everybody can get them down.
So the website is Deutser.com, DEUTSER.com, braddeutser.com, and then Deutser Clarity Institute, DeutserClarityInstitute.com, and then on social media as well.
So I encourage you to go check him out, find out more about that. You can hang out with other conscious leaders and chat about this episode or any past episodes inside of our Facebook and LinkedIn groups. Just look for the Leadership and Loyalty Podcast. Find out more about me, Dov Baron, and how you can hire me as a speaker or strategist for your organization. Go to fullmontyleadership.com/consulting or fullmontyleadership.com/speaking. Please be aware that the research consistently shows the fastest growing companies face exactly the same challenge as you. They're spending time, money, energy, and effort attracting, training, and developing top talent, and oftentimes having them leave at an alarming rate. If you're frustrated with investing in the training and development of your talent, only to have them leave before you get your ROI, then come talk to us at fullmontyleadership.com, where we provide the essential leadership skills to rekindle and amplify the hidden loyalty assets inside of your organization by tapping into purpose. fullmontyleadership.com, because you can't outsource authenticity. And I want to thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. Till next time, stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about where you need greater levels of clarity by being even more human. I'm Dov Baron, and I'm here to assist you tapping into your deep greatness to reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. and I am out.